Thank you. Thank you, everybody attending in person and taking that risk. It is a risk. Thank you, everybody who is participating online. We appreciate your support. Just kudos to the job that Linda has done with the SNP and bringing us all together for this. So Linda asked me to talk about some research I just did on some food-based dietary guidelines and how that actually translates. We've been talking a lot about what we need to do, but what are we actually doing? And so this is actually a paper I just published. If you go up to the website, Tlusty.solutions, is that going to come up? Oh, it'll come up? Okay. So just Tlusty.solutions is my website. There's a place you can go to on publications. The top one under newest papers is called Food-Based Dietary Guidelines for Seafood Do Not Translate into Increased Long-Chain Omega-3 Fatty Acids for U.S. Consumers. So pretty much that's what's going on. You know, we have all these recommendations, but we're actually not making the translation. And so a lot of this is going to pull on all the information you've already heard today. And so really when we talk about the dietary guidelines, members, Tom talked about this earlier, with infants, you know, we got them to realize the importance of omega-3s for infants. And in all 180 pages of the dietary guidelines, how many pages is it? It's a lot. 800?
835.
835 pages. Omega-3 is mentioned, actually omega is mentioned twice. Under the infant section, and there it's highlighted, omega-3 once, omega-6. And that's on page 60.
Well, that's a DGA.
Oh, sorry, the diet. Okay, 120 pages of the DG. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's only mentioned once. So for all we're talking about omega-3s are being important, it's mentioned. Now, it does come up as in fatty acids and some other things. But within the dietary guidelines, if you look at seafood, the green horizontal line is actually what's recommended. The blue dot is what we're actually happening. So within the dietary guidelines, we're supposed to be doing this, and they realize we actually don't do that. For adults, we talk about nutrient-dense foods. And so nutrient-dense foods shows up a lot more, like 175 times. This is where it gets tagged to seafood. But for every time we've heard today, eat 8 ounces a week, within the dietary guidelines, we see seafood for males and females. Again, the green line is what we're supposed to be eating. The blue dot is actually what we are eating. So again, we aren't doing it. The government's saying, hey, do this, and we're not. Eat Seafood America, Linda's trying to fix that. But it gets worse. And the reason it gets worse is because we eat seafood. And here, according to NFI in 2019, bottom to top are actually the most seafood that we eat. We eat shrimp mostly. Second is salmon, third is canned tuna, fourth is tilapia, fifth is Alaska pollock, sixth is cod, seventh catfish. What did we hear Gretchen say earlier today? Which one of those is high omega-3? Salmon. It says eat seafood, but then we choose species that are actually low in omega-3. And what I did here is I just took what is actually available based on NFI, and then I translated that to what we should be doing if we were actually eating those 8 ounces a week. And so really that would just shift everything up. Then if we look at what's the omega-3 content of that, again, the left-hand side 2 graphs correspond to each other. So based on the NFI availability, we are getting about 130 grams of omega-3s, or I'm sorry, milligrams per day, 130 in what we're actually eating, because most of that is coming in through the salmon, not a whole lot through everything else. If we would eat the 8 ounces, the way we eat seafood, according to what the government is telling us to, we would actually get up to about 180 milligrams per day. Now, Gretchen earlier said there's no RDI for seafood, but it should be in the 250 range. Okay, now we do some supplements, we have some eggs, there's some other things, maybe 30%. So we're actually, if we were eating 8 ounces a week, we would be getting up into that range with the extra supplementation. Okay, but we're still just not really aligning up our behavior with what's, this is the classic, what the government wants me to do, what I actually do. And so this is a big problem, but so basically with the US dietary guidelines, it's recommending 8 ounces a week. We don't do that. It's recommending seafood, and we primarily go to shrimp. And so again, we've talked about the benefits of oily fish. We need to change that. Nutrient density is important. And so maybe this is something where we can get some accord. Let's eat nutrient-dense foods. Let's eat the nutrient-dense seafood. Except seafood as a nutrient-dense food is only mentioned once. Salmon, again, that's like where a lot of our omega-3s are coming from. It's only mentioned 10 times in the dietary guidelines. Once as a high omega-3 product, once as a high calcium vitamin D, 8 times associated with low methylmercury. So again, it's still this wow, it's really nutrient dense, it's really good, but we're really still focused on the mercury issue. And in the dietary guidelines, we need to shift away from that. And Tom has assured me that the executive summary, which is the only thing most people read, does do the job of shifting away from that. I still say we got to do a better job of that. So let's not just pick on the US. What are we doing in the rest of the world? So this is an analysis. Again, if you download the paper, you can find Springerman in 2020 did an analysis of global food-based dietary guidelines. And that dark color is countries with a food-based dietary guideline that actually make a recommendation on seafood. The dark green is they have a food-based dietary guideline, but they do not. NR is no recommendation for seafood. The light blue is they say seafood, but they don't give a grams per day in the seafood. So they'll say eat more seafood, increase production, increase consumption 20%. They don't actually say what you're really supposed to be eating. And then the light green is no food-based dietary guidelines. So a lot of countries still don't have that. If you look at those countries with the food-based dietary guidelines that are telling you how much seafood to eat, so that's on the x-axis, is what's the recommended consumption. And if you look at, Micah in 2014 did a paper where they actually looked at a country-level average of how much omega-3 fatty acids they were consuming in their diet. And there's really not a really good correlation. As food-based dietary guidelines say eat more seafood, the countries are not eating more seafood. And so some of that is, why is that? And what are the drivers of omega-3 inclusion in the diet? And so, well, what's important? Well, price is important. So in the upper left-hand column, we have gross domestic product based on the World Bank. How rich are countries? And you kind of see a slight increase, okay? If you go on the left lower column, that's actually a ranked price data. How expensive is the seafood in the country? And you don't really see a great correlation either. The total fish consumption in the upper right hand, the more fish on average people eat in a country, the higher the omega-3 consumption is dietarily. Makes sense. And then if you look at that total fish consumption and what % of that is marine, you don't see a great correlation either. So we have a bunch of data sets grabbed from a bunch of different areas. How do you make sense of it all? Well, one thing to do is just to look at, are you above the median or below the median? So median is just the midpoint, and what's happening? And so if we look at the midpoint of the omega-3s is about 98 milligrams per day. Okay, so if we rank all countries, right in the middle is 98 milligrams per day as a global average. Think about globally what this is doing. This isn't just a US health crisis, this is a global health crisis, okay? So now if we look at the medians, we see different values for each of the ones. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to count the number of countries appearing in each of the quadrants. And so again, how rich is a country? Well, in that upper left-hand column, richer countries tend to have higher seafood consumption than do poorer countries. That kind of makes sense. If we go over to the top right, countries that consume more fish have higher omega-3s. We kind of saw that one makes sense. If we go down to the bottom, the percent marine fish in the diet, again, if you have more marine fish in your diet, you have higher omega-3. That makes sense. The rank price data is the one that actually flips that, where when fish is cheaper, you have more omega-3s. And Dave Loves, who's going to be speaking next, one after me, he'll talk more about price and the influence of price. But we're seeing a global signal at a country level aggregate. So kind of interesting. So if we just kind of put these together and rank them 0 to 4, where if you're a high GPD, a low price, high total fish, high marine fish, if you hit each of those 4, you're 4. And then this is, do you have a food-based dietary guideline? And the black top line is there are no food-based dietary guidelines. The third blue line is you have a food-based dietary guideline that's giving you an amount to eat. And statistically, there's no difference here. Again, food-based dietary guidelines really just, they're not doing anything. So I like to consider, food solutions is in my title. And I don't have a solution. I don't. We need to get people to like fish. We need to get people to eat more fish. That's our shared goal. But then when we sit down and we actually do it, we're eating fried shrimp a lot. And Dave Love, again, is going to talk about the aspect of frying. So I'll leave that to him. Sorry, I don't have an answer for this. And again, this is the importance of the Eat Seafood America campaign. This is going to be how do we translate, and Arlen, you're going to talk about how we get messages out. And again, these effective messages that actually get people to move their behavior. That's really what we need to do. With that, thank you. My email's up there. If you have questions, I'll get on Hopin or email me. I'm on Twitter, so thank you.